My sister called security to kick me out, but the guard's words shocked everyone in the room. Stay with me as I share how I stood up and showed him what family really means. And if this story moves you, don't forget to support our channel. Hit subscribe, drop a like, and share it with your loved one. Amina Jallo couldn't stop smiling as she held the elegant envelope in her hand. A VIP invitation to her sister Zola's gala, just like the one celebrities and top entrepreneurs received, was now hers. At 28, Amina had worked tirelessly to build her tech startup from the ground up, and this was her chance to shine among Lagos's elite. She imagined the night ahead, sparkling chandeliers, clinking glasses, and conversations that could open doors to new opportunities. She carefully chose her designer outfit, a deep emerald dress that hugged her in all the right places, paired with sleek heels and subtle, radiant jewelry. As she looked in the mirror, she whispered to herself, "Tonight, I belong here. Tonight, I shine." The excitement bubbled inside her like champagne. Stepping out of the car, Amina's breath caught. The red carpet stretched before her, lined with photographers snapping pictures of arrivals. Influential businesspeople, artists, and socialites mingled with effortless elegance, exchanging smiles and introductions. She felt a surge of pride and hope, imagining herself effortlessly moving through the crowd, making connections, and celebrating her hard-earned success. She didn't notice the faint flicker of Zola's gaze from across the room, a subtle shadow behind the sparkle. Amina was ready for a night of celebration, completely unaware that this glamorous invitation carried a twist, a betrayal carefully hidden behind the glittering lights and champagne glasses. Amina hadn't even taken her first sip of champagne when she felt it, a sudden, sharp glance slicing through the crowd. Across the room, Zola's eyes were fixed on her, narrowing ever so slightly. There was no warmth, no sisterly welcome, just a frown that made Amina's stomach twist. Before she could step forward to greet her, Zola subtly signaled the head of security, a tall, composed man named Tabo Moyo, who immediately began walking in Amina's direction. Tabo approached with careful politeness, a rehearsed calm in his tone. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said softly. "Could you step aside for a moment?" His eyes flicked toward Zola briefly, and Amina felt a jolt of confusion. "Step aside? For what?" She glanced around, realizing that several guests had begun to notice. Whispers rippled like a quiet wave, subtle at first, then louder as curiosity spread. People paused mid-conversation, craning their necks to see what was happening. Trying to maintain her composure, Amina smiled politely, taking a small step back. "Is there a problem?" she asked, her voice steady but her pulse racing. Tabo's expression remained neutral, and he gestured slightly toward a quieter corner. That's when Zola, in her high heels and perfectly styled gown, glided toward the center of the room with that practiced, public-facing poise she always wore like armor. Her voice, calm but sharp enough for several people to hear, floated across the crowd. "Amina, I don't think you're supposed to be here tonight," she said, just loud enough to draw attention, her smile polite but her eyes cold. Gasps and murmurs spread immediately. Some guests exchanged confused looks. Others whispered, leaning closer to get a better view. Amina felt the air thicken around her, a sudden weight pressing down on her chest. She opened her mouth to respond, but the hum of whispers, the clicking of heels, and the quiet laughter of startled guests made her hesitate. She realized with a sinking feeling that this wasn't going to be an ordinary night. Something in Zola's tone hinted that the glamour, the celebration, even the recognition she had imagined, might all be a setup. For a moment, Amina stood frozen, trying to make sense of it. The red carpet lights reflected off the chandeliers, casting sparkling dots across the polished floor, but they no longer felt inviting. She felt the eyes of the crowd on her, their curiosity like a weight she hadn't asked for. A twist she hadn't expected was unfolding, and she had to figure out quickly how to handle it without losing her dignity or her place in the room. Amina took a deep breath, straightening her shoulders despite the prickling heat of embarrassment crawling across her skin. She reached into her clutch and pulled out the elegant VIP invitation, holding it up so the room could see. "I was invited," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Zola herself sent this to me." For a moment, a hush fell over the crowd. Guests leaned in, trying to catch a glimpse of the invite. A few whispered among themselves, nodding in surprise, but before anyone could speak, Zola stepped forward, her heels clicking sharply against the polished floor. She raised a hand, silencing the murmurs, and then her voice rang out like a bell. "Jealous and unworthy," she said, pointing subtly at Amina. "That's exactly what you are. Always trying to ride on my success. You don't belong here." A wave of gasps and murmurs rippled through the room. Some guests looked shocked, eyebrows rising as they tried to process what was happening. Others whispered, exchanging curious glances, clearly confused about who was telling the truth. Amina's heart sank, but she forced herself to stay upright, hiding the knot of humiliation tightening in her chest. I really don't understand, Amina began, her voice steady even though it trembled slightly inside. I have the invite. Everything here. This event was planned for me to attend as a VIP guest. She held the envelope higher, hoping to cut through the noise, but Zola interrupted again, louder this time, making sure everyone could hear. Don't pretend you're important. You've always been jealous of me, always trying to steal the spotlight. Tonight, you'll see exactly where you belong. The tension in the room escalated. Guests shifted uncomfortably, some glancing at their friends, unsure whether to intervene, others sneaking glances at Amina, as though watching a drama unfold on a stage. Cameras clicked, phones lit up with flashes, capturing every movement. The elegant gala, once filled with glittering lights and laughter, now felt charged with hostility and whispers of scandal. Amina's face remained calm, even smiling faintly, but inside she felt a storm. Her mind raced, calculating her next step, reminding herself not to let Zola's words shake her self-worth. She refused to cry, refused to stumble. This was not just a test of her composure, it was a test of her dignity. As Zola's sharp eyes cut across the room, Amina realized that tonight was bigger than just a gala or family rivalry. It was a stage where truth, courage, and self-respect would clash with lies and jealousy. And even if the crowd didn't see it yet, she knew one thing clearly: she wasn't going to back down. Tabo Moyo, the head of security, had been watching the unfolding drama carefully from the moment Amina arrived. He had seen Zola's cold glance, the whispers, and the growing tension in the room. Now, as the situation escalated, he stepped closer to Amina, asking politely to see her invitation again. His trained eyes scanned the elegant card, noting the embossed gold lettering, the VIP stamp, and the official gala seal. Something didn't sit right. He pulled out his tablet and began cross-referencing the names on the official guest list. His fingers moved quickly, tapping and scrolling, double-checking every detail. And then he noticed it. Amina's name was listed, right there in the VIP section, submitted under the account of Zola Jallo herself. Tabo blinked, momentarily stunned. Why would Zola publicly humiliate someone she had personally invited? The logic didn't add up, and a chill ran down his spine as suspicion took hold. The more he studied the list, the clearer it became. Zola's actions were deliberate, calculated. This was not an accident, and it was not a misunderstanding. She had invited her sister only to create a spectacle, to humiliate her in front of Lagos's most influential people. Tabo's jaw tightened. He had dealt with difficult personalities before, with rich, powerful clients who thought threats and manipulation could bend people to their will. But this? Using a family member's trust against them? That was cruel. Tabo took a deep breath, weighing his options. He couldn't simply confront Zola in a public scene without caution. The room was buzzing with guests, and any misstep could make the situation worse. Yet he also couldn't ignore the truth. Amina had done nothing wrong, and he knew how easily she could be crushed by the weight of Zola's influence if no one stepped in. He moved subtly through the crowd, keeping a careful eye on both sisters. Every gesture Zola made, every flash of her smile toward the guests he noted. Tabo knew timing would be everything. He needed the right moment, a way to reveal the truth without causing chaos, but still protecting Amina from further humiliation. As he watched Amina stand there, calm and dignified despite the whispers and stares, he felt a surge of respect. She hadn't broken under pressure, and he could see her strength. That realization made his decision easier. He would act, but carefully, strategically. Zola's plan to shame her sister publicly was starting to crumble, and Tabo would make sure it didn't succeed. For the first time, the head of security felt like more than just an observer. He was about to become a quiet guardian in a room full of glitter, lies, and ambition, and he would make sure the truth came to light before it was too late. Tabo took a deep breath and stepped forward, his posture calm but commanding. The crowd's chatter began to fade as people sensed something important was about to happen. He raised his voice just enough to reach the edges of the room, clear and firm. "Ma'am," he said, looking directly at Zola, "Amina is on the VIP list you approved." The room froze. For a heartbeat, it was as if time had stopped. Guests exchanged stunned glances, whispers immediately erupting into soft murmurs that spread like wildfire. Cameras clicked furiously, capturing the shock, the disbelief, and the sudden shift in atmosphere. Gasps echoed through the crowd, some louder, some more subtle, but all carrying the same sentiment. They had just witnessed a public challenge to Zola's authority. Zola's face went from smug confidence to tight panic. Her perfectly styled hair seemed almost to vibrate with tension, and her polished smile faltered. She took a step back, clutching her glass a little too tightly. The poised, untouchable aura she had carried all night was cracking before everyone's eye. For the first time, the audience could see a hint of fear behind her polished facade. Guests started leaning closer, murmuring among themselves. "She invited her herself?" one whispered. "Was all that just a setup?" another asked. The buzz of conversation grew louder, subtle accusations beginning to form. Some questioned Zola's motives outright, while others speculated, connecting dots they hadn't seen before. Whispers of manipulation, jealousy, and cruelty began to ripple through the room, seeping into corners and over the heads of those who had remained politely neutral. Amina stood quietly, holding her head high, her face calm, almost serene. But inside, her heart raced. Relief and vindication surged through her, mingled with a careful patience. She didn't need to say a word. Tabo had done it for her. The truth was now visible to everyone, and the power dynamics were shifting fast. Zola's eyes darted around the room, searching for allies, for someone who might salvage her crumbling image. But the cold stares and questioning glances told her everything she needed to know. The crowd was no longer hers to control. Every whispered doubt, every sideways glance, was a crack forming in the social fortress she had built around herself. Tabo's intervention had done more than just reveal the truth. It had turned the room upside down. The glamorous gala, once a celebration of wealth and influence, had become a stage where honesty, courage, and integrity were quietly taking the... And in that moment, Amina realized that the tide had turned. She was no longer the target. She was the center of attention for all the right reasons, and Zola's plan to humiliate her had spectacularly failed. Amina took a slow breath and let her mind drift for a moment, recalling all the times Zola had tried to overshadow her. It wasn't just tonight. Over the years, Zola had subtly undermined her accomplishments. Small comments disguised as jokes, dismissive smirks when Amina spoke about her work, and that constant, unspoken competition that made family gatherings tense. Each incident had stung, but Amina had kept her focus, determined not to let jealousy or petty rivalry slow her down. Her thoughts shifted to her recent tech startup in Abuja. The launch had made headlines across Nigeria, innovative, ambitious, and impactful. Investors had praised her vision, the media had highlighted her achievements, and young women across the country had started looking up to her as a role model. Yet here was Zola, standing in the middle of a glittering gala, trying to twist the narrative and make it seem as if Amina didn't belong. The audacity of it made Amina's blood boil, but she kept her face calm, letting her inner fire shine through her composure. Looking around the room, she noticed the subtle shifts in the crowd. Guests who had been whispering, unsure who was in the right, were now quietly connecting the dots. Some nodded slightly, recalling articles about Amina's successes. Others exchanged knowing looks, realizing that Zola's attempt to humiliate her sister wasn't just cruel, it was transparent. Amina's reputation, built with sweat, focus, and resilience, was solid. Zola's credibility, on the other hand, was fragile, crumbling in real time under the weight of her own jealousy. Amina allowed herself a small, quiet smile. This was more than just vindication, it was a moment of clarity. The crowd wasn't just seeing a sister wronged, it was witnessing the pattern of betrayal, the years of envy, and the stark difference between substance and showmanship. Zola's carefully curated image of elegance and control was falling apart, leaving only the harsh truth. Ambition without integrity, charm without respect, and envy without achievement could never win against hard-earned success. The whispers turned into more confident murmurs, some punctuated with nods of admiration for Amina. Guests began to view her not as a victim, but as a figure of resilience, someone who had faced both family and social manipulation and remained unbroken. Meanwhile, Zola's face tightened with frustration and disbelief. Her plan to dominate the room, to steal the spotlight at her sister's expense, had backfired spectacularly. For Amina, the moment was both vindicating and liberating. She realized that all the effort, all the late nights, all the sacrifices had built more than a career. They had built a reputation that not even a sister's envy could tarnish. Tonight, the crowd saw not just a tech entrepreneur, but a woman whose integrity and perseverance could not be shaken, no matter how glittering the gala, no matter how sharp the ambition of those around. Tabo stepped closer to Amina and leaned in just enough so she could hear him over the murmurs. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "why don't you take the stage? The room is listening to you anyway. It's your moment." Amina hesitated for only a heartbeat. She looked around at the crowd, curious eyes, murmurs, whispers, and then straightened her back. This was her chance, not just to defend herself, but to take control of the narrative. When she stepped onto the small platform at the center of the room, the chatter faded into silence. The chandeliers sparkled above her, reflecting in her calm eyes. She took a deep breath, and then spoke, her voice steady and clear, reaching the far corners of the gala. "Tonight," she began, "is about more than a VIP invitation or family drama. It's about perseverance, self-worth, and the courage to stand tall even when those closest to you try to tear you down." She paused briefly, letting her words sink in, and then continued. "I've worked hard to build my life and my career. I've faced challenges, disappointments, and yes, even betrayal, but I've learned something important. Success is never about the approval of those who wish to see you fail. It's about believing in yourself, trusting your abilities, and refusing to let toxic voices dictate your. The crowd shifted, leaning in. Some faces showed surprise, others admiration. A few nodded slowly, clearly impressed by her honesty and the calm power in her voice. Cameras flashed, capturing not just her words, but her poise, her confidence, and the quiet fire that radiated from someone who refused to be broken. Amina's eyes briefly met Zola's. The younger woman's expression, once sharp and controlling, now faltered. There was panic hidden behind the mask of elegance. The applause began softly, hesitant at first, and then grew louder, rolling through the room like a wave. Guests whispered among themselves, clearly reevaluating everything they had seen tonight. Zola's carefully constructed image of control and superiority was crumbling with every word Amina spoke. And to anyone facing betrayal, jealousy, or attempts to diminish your worth, Amina continued, her voice rising slightly with conviction. Remember this. Integrity, courage, and self-respect are never given. They are earned, protected, and defended. Stand tall, even when it's hard. Speak your truth, even when the world is watching. By the time she stepped down, the applause had become almost deafening. Guests were not only cheering her words, they were cheering her courage, her strength, and the undeniable integrity she carried. Zola, meanwhile, shrank back into the shadows, her social standing unraveling as whispers of manipulation and envy spread. Amina smiled quietly, feeling a mix of relief and triumph. She had faced humiliation, she had faced family betrayal, and yet she had emerged stronger, commanding the respect of everyone in the room. Tonight was not just a victory, it was a declaration. No one could define her worth, and no one could steal her light. As the gala continued, whispers of Zola's actions spread like wildfire. Guests who had been quietly observing now talked openly about the spectacle that had unfolded. Some shook their heads, others exchanged knowing glances, and a few muttered under their breath about the thin line between ambition and cruelty. Word of the confrontation reached the sponsors and investors who had backed the event, and they weren't pleased. One by one, key figures approached Zola privately, their expressions sharp, their voices low but firm. "Is this true?" one asked, holding up his phone, which displayed videos from the earlier confrontation. "Did you really try to publicly humiliate your own sister, a verified VIP guest?" Another added, "We trusted you to host a professional event. This behavior is unacceptable. How can we continue supporting someone who manipulates and deceives for personal gain?" Zola's smile faltered. Her carefully rehearsed explanations, the charming words she had used to control the room, now sounded hollow, even to her own ears. The investors pressed further, their questions piercing through the thin veil of poise she had tried to maintain. Each inquiry, each skeptical glance, chipped away at the reputation she had built over years of social influence and calculated charm. The gala she had designed to showcase her success was quickly turning into a public trial of her ethic. Meanwhile, Amina's calm dignity became the contrast everyone noticed. While Zola stammered and fumbled excuses behind closed doors, Amina's image of strength, integrity, and resilience grew with each passing minute. Guests and sponsors alike began openly praising her poise and courage, commenting on how gracefully she had handled humiliation and betrayal. The room buzzed with admiration for the younger sister, who had turned a moment of potential shame into a display of power and confidence. By the end of the evening, Zola's social standing had shifted dramatically. Conversations that once revolved around her influence now questioned her honesty and character. Videos of her outburst, paired with Amina's composed response, circulated among guests and on social media, spreading quickly across Lagos and beyond. She had become the example of what happens when ambition is driven by envy rather than integrity. Amina, on the other hand, became synonymous with resilience. Her reputation as a rising tech entrepreneur and a woman of principle was reinforced. People spoke not only about her professional accomplishment, but also about the courage she had shown in standing up to manipulation and public humiliation. Investors and sponsors who had been impressed by Zola's gala now approached Amina with genuine interest, recognizing both her intelligence and her unwavering character. As the night drew to a close, it was clear. Zola's carefully constructed world of charm, influence, and social prestige had crumbled, while Amina's light had only grown brighter. In that room full of glitter and ambition, one truth stood out. Integrity always outshines envy, and courage has a way of inspiring everyone who witnesses it. After the gala ended and the crowd slowly began to disperse, Amina stood near the edge of the room, quietly sipping her water, letting the tension finally ebb from her shoulder. Her heart was still racing, but there was also a deep sense of satisfaction. That's when Tabo approached her, his tall frame moving with calm authority, his eyes warm and steady. "Ma'am," he said, offering a small, respectful nod. "I need to tell you something. What you just did tonight, it took courage." Real courage. Amina looked up, meeting his gaze. There was no judgment there, only genuine respect, and for some reason, it made her chest swell with quiet pride. Tabo continued, his voice low so only she could hear. I've seen people hurt by those closest to them, family, friends, even colleagues. Manipulation, jealousy, betrayal. I've dealt with it more times than I can count. And I've learned something. It doesn't define you, and it doesn't have to destroy you. What matters is how you respond. And you responded with strength and dignity. Amina felt a shiver run down her spine. The weight of his words, paired with the respect in his tone, was grounding. Thank you, she said softly, her usual confidence tempered by a sense of relief. It wasn't easy. Tabo smiled faintly, understanding. I know, and that's why I want to offer you something more than praise. Consider me a protector, an ally, someone you can trust if you ever face obstacles like tonight. Not just from strangers, but from people who should have been on your side. I've seen the way you handle pressure. I've seen the way you carry yourself. You're destined for bigger things, and sometimes even the strongest need support. Amina's mind raced. All night she had felt isolated, standing in a room full of influential guests while her own sister tried to humiliate her. Yet now, here was someone with experience, wisdom, and connections, offering guidance and protection, not for favors or control, but because he respected her character. I appreciate that, she said, her voice steady, though her heart felt light with relief. It means a lot to know someone sees me, really sees me, and has my back. Tabo nodded, giving her a small, reassuring smile. You've earned your victory tonight, but this is just the beginning. Keep building, keep leading, and remember, true allies are rare. Find them, trust them, and never let anyone undermine your worth. Amina looked around the room once more, seeing the gala fading into memory, but feeling something stronger taking shape. Connection, mentorship, and genuine support. In that moment, she realized that she had gained more than victory over humiliation or public recognition. She had gained a mentor, a protector, and an ally, a person who could help guide her through challenges and amplify her successes. And for the first time in a long while, she smiled not just at her triumph, but at the journey ahead, knowing she wasn't walking it alone. Amina stepped out of the gala that night feeling lighter than she had in years. The glittering lights, the whispers, the tension, it all seemed distant now. What mattered was not the chaos behind her, but the power she carried forward. She had turned humiliation into triumph, and she knew it was time to do more than just celebrate her own success. Within weeks, Amina launched a women-led entrepreneurship and empowerment program in Lagos. The initiative focused on helping young women turn ideas into businesses, find funding, and build networks of support. She wanted to create a space where talent and integrity mattered more than status or family influence. The program quickly attracted attention, not just locally, but across Nigeria and even the continent, as women shared stories of how Amina's journey inspired them to pursue their dreams without fear. Her story went viral on social media. Clips from the gala, paired with posts about her achievements and the way she handled Zola's betrayal, circulated rapidly. Messages poured in from women in Lagos, Accra, Nairobi, and Johannesburg, all expressing admiration and gratitude. For many, Amina became a symbol of resilience, proof that courage and integrity could outshine envy and manipulation. As she walked past the glowing skyline of Lagos that evening, Amina felt a sense of unstoppable momentum. She was untouchable, not because she had defeated someone else, but because she had risen above it with dignity and strength. She carried her lessons, her courage, and her vision for the future with her, ready to tackle her next venture, whatever it might be. She smiled to herself, thinking of all she had endured and overcome. Family can betray, but integrity and courage never fail, she whispered. And with that, she stepped fully into her next chapter, empowered, respected, and ready to shine even brighter.